And we're back. All right. Okay, so give me a sec, I'm finishing my bagel. So, today's class we're going to be covering shape and depth in gesture drawing. I have a few class handouts to share. Some of them that I've already posted in the classroom chat, right here, in Drawing Corner. These right here. I'll explain these as we go. I'll explain these before the second set, but I'll explain a little bit of them while we're doing the warm-up set. But what we're focused on today is we're focused on trying to give depth cues to our figures in when we do shorthand 1-minute poses. And yeah, you're right, I'm muted in Discord. Okay. Well, anyway, we're focused on trying to add depth cues to our poses. Shorthand depth cues. Like, they're not going to be perfect. We're not going for like perfect perspective or anything like that. But we're trying to like insert little bits of cheats that play with depth and that help us visualize depth when we're drawing the figures. We also want to push depth and add depth to poses that might be a little flat. So we want to see if we can like push a pose beyond what it's actually doing. If it's not giving us much, like for example, like let's say we get like a really kind of plain pose or something where like the limbs are kind of overlapping. We do a little bit of like what we did on the silhouette studies, where we change the position of the limbs to make a stronger silhouette. Except we do that within this with depth in mind. Like, how would we add? This is a fairly flat pose. Like, how would we add depth to it? Well, there's a lot of different strategies for that. Some of them are go over in here. We're not going to worry too much about getting too far into them for this first set, because this will just be like warm-ups to get our hand and eye going. But as you're doing the warm-up set, take a glance at the handouts that they've given, and I'll talk a little bit about it. But some of the things we're going to be looking for is we're going to be looking to add like floor grids, shadows, darken or shrink the limb that's further away from us. Add kind of directional lines that are going towards the vanishing point, wrapping over the body, to like some kind of a ghosted, invisible, freehand perspective vanishing point. Correlate the limbs to each other. Add underside shadows for darkening or thickening lines. One I didn't add here is overlapping limbs. It's another thing. But there's different approaches that we're going to be taking tonight. Here's 3 of the main ones. We're mainly going to focus on the toon one on the left, but we'll probably bounce between these 3 a little bit. But anyway, for this warm-up, and we also might play with the Starman a little bit, which is another thing that we've been talking about in other classes here. So we're going to get started on a warm-up set of let's make this 21-minute poses, actually, because we want to get started. We want to like hit the ground running with this, I think. So first off, let me lower the volume of the music bot a bit, so it's not overpowering my voice in the stream as much. Alexa, stop. Thank you. And Alexa's no longer doing the background ambient noise. So we'll get started on this first set. So it'll be 21-minute poses. Okay, Google, set timer for 20 minutes, 30 seconds.
20 minutes and 30.
All right, so we're starting now. That's a really bad pose, so I'm going to change that. Okay, so when you get 2 poses like this, try to think of them as a singular unit. Again, though, this is just the warm-up set, and these are just 1-minute poses, so you can do whatever. If you get something really complicated like this, maybe just use it as an opportunity to kind of just do a quick, like, kind of, like, don't lift your hand off the page sort of exercise. Or limit how much you lift off the page. But anyway, you want to look. One thing we want to definitely look for is negative space, and that's another thing that will help you with adding depth to your drawings. When you have negative space where you can space out the limbs from each other, you can correlate them a little easier for when you're going to be adding depth to them. But again, this is just the warm-up set, so we're just kind of getting into the groove. I'm not too worried about getting too heavy into the lesson materials. We might dip into it a little bit. But here's a great shot if you did want to play, if you did want to experiment with depth. I mean, like, I'll maybe use this as an opportunity to show something else. So, okay, we got this really clear line of action here. This guy kind of scrunching almost like a shrug with his arm there. But his hand's like coming really close. We can push that even further in our little cartoon study here. His foot back there will be really small. This foot is a little bit closer towards it, so this foot will be a little bit bigger. Top of his thigh here. His calf is going to be shrinking back there. So you could even like kind of pitch this back here some more. And his fist back there can be like really fairly small. Even though that's like the center of focus here. Yeah, like this hand got beefed up a little bit in size. This leg could be shrunk even more maybe. So this is kind of a I'm gonna just like draw this one guy down here, I think. It's this one dude down here who's kind of drifting to the side, so his center of gravity is kind of drifting as he's like leaning over to the side because he's about to like change position. So his leg is going to shoot out to catch him as he's like as his body's kind of falling. Kind of drifty way an athlete would move and reposition himself. So I'm going to do a little bit of a redux of some of the silhouette stuff we did last week on this guy. Just a teensy bit. As part of the warm-ups here for this warm-up set. Okay, so this guy, oops. We've drawn him before. But you can see there's some opportunities here to kind of play with the depth of his body, for sure. You can actually see one of the depth tricks happening on his shadowed foot back there. And this this thigh that's moving away from us, or tilted away from us. So it has more shadow on it. So it's turning away from the light. But that helps differentiate the limbs a little bit better for us. Same with this back arm here. You could even like probably maybe just shade the whole thing in. just to differentiate it more. Again, these are just like quick 1-minute poses. We're just trying to get a quick read on these. We're just getting warmed up. So I'm going to use this one as an opportunity to practice one of the multitude of different approaches you can take to doing these this evening. And this one's kind of the Disney style rough figure pose puppet. Oops. The main one we want to go for is the one that's on the handout that's the tune approach, because we want to build in like elements of the outfit as the depth cues and elements of the body and so on.
Someone just replied
What's that?
with a picture of a boat, a plane, and the communist fucking star and sickle flag.
What? Huh? I have no idea what that comment was about. So I'll probably have us do like 2-minute poses to really slow down and think about how we can add depth cues for the next set. And then we'll probably go back to doing ones again, because I think it'd be good to get just like quick reads on stuff. So we'll probably do a variation of variations of ones and twos this evening. So this guy. So how could we shorthand some depth with this guy? Well, his torso is kind of like twisting towards us, like down in the waist. So his like buttocks is more facing towards us. So we could probably increase the size of his buttocks. For one thing, we can increase the size of his foot to exaggerate that a bit. And since this is kind of going down, like parallel to us, we can keep that like kind of medium-ish size. Maybe just darken in the back leg here just to differentiate it. So get 2 poses like this. If you're feeling bold, you maybe try to go for both of them. Or you can do one of them. But if you do both of them, try to treat them as a singular unit. Kind of. Like they're interconnected and they're correlate them to each other. I'm just doing like a really, really rough, loose impression of the gesture of it right here. These 2 guys. So this lady, we could really potentially exaggerate the depth. This is an opportunity to play with floor grids, for sure. This hand is coming towards us, therefore that hand is bigger. This hand is going away from us, therefore that hand is smaller. And you just exaggerate with it, and you exaggerate with what you're saying a little bit more. Just play with it a little. Like, you're not going for perfection here. You're just trying to get like an overall impression of the idea and play with it. So I'm thinking for next Saturday, I'm going to give all of us an opportunity to do some timed figure pose practice during class with the Starman. We'll touch on the Starman a little bit more tonight. The Starman is a simplified way for storyboard artists to approach drawing the figure. I want to hopefully like find some really good action poses that people could play with, and we might play with placing the Starman inside of story panels. But I want to find some kind of productive, like, timed pose, like, draw it quickly, move on to the next sort of thing that we can do that's in the vein of this for next Saturday. So on this, like, this is just like a drawing that was thrown in here for variation. But I'm using this as an opportunity to kind of warm up my sense of negative space. You only got a minute to record your impression of it. But negative space is one of the building blocks of depth cues. That's one thing that I didn't include on the handouts that I wish I had. I'll talk about it a bit more, but don't worry, we're going to get an opportunity to play more with this stuff Friday too. Like, we'll be doing basically a part 2 of this exact stuff that we're doing today on Friday. So today's almost kind of like a glorified warm-up.
So there's 2 ways to look at it. There's 3 ways to look at it.
Who are you talking to?
The intermediate one.
Sorry, who are you talking to?
Oh, sorry about that.
No problem.
Whoa, that pose really looks difficult to make. I mean, to act.
To make in real life, you mean?
Yeah. To try and mimic that in real life.
Someone who's definitely a trained athlete and then doing kind of Shaolin Kung Fu poses. This is definitely more of something would be highly trained to do that kind of acrobatic stuff. Okay, let's see here. Maybe I was drawing a little too big. Shrink that. So I'm coming back to this a little bit rough today. I had a break day on Tuesday where I needed some extra sleepy time because I've been having some rough nights of sleep. And so I came back today a little bit unpracticed. But we had a good 3 or 4 hours before class. Yeah, 4 hours before class of doing warm-up drawing, warm-up sketching. And I'm starting to get back into the swing. And I should be in good shape from some more practice tomorrow. And on Friday. But I really like the momentum that we got building like last week. Like, I think the regularity of like doing like a good chunk of figure drawing every day was really starting to build up good momentum for me. And for some of the other people I saw who were keeping up with me on that. But sometimes you need rest days, and then kind of lose rhythm a little bit, but that's okay. Because, I mean, otherwise you're gonna hurt yourself if you ever do it. One of the things that you gotta kind of struggle with when you're getting your rhythm back is sometimes you kind of have an overload of information. If you're trying to get everything out at once, you're trying to do way too much or put too much pressure on yourself when really you should be taking a step back. Because you can handle each step more impressively and effectively if you take it bit by bit. Because you're concentrating your energy on each small thing instead of everything at once. And you're only human, so you shouldn't beat yourself up when you break rhythm. Just pick yourself back up and you'll get it back. And sometimes you, like, when you think you're having an off day, you take a look back at what you actually did, realize, huh, I was actually doing a lot better than I thought.
So in an off day, you disconnect from art-related stuff like.
No,
I
and
don't
not
know,
no.
maybe.
When I mean an off day, is I mean you're trying to get back in shape and you're not really feeling it, or you're trying to draw but you're not really feeling it. Like an off day, when off day, I don't mean I don't mean a break day when I say off day. When I say off day, I mean like you're trying to have a work day and you're trying to have a productive study or work day, and you don't really feel like you're getting your best you're getting your best results in your drawing or whatever. Everyone has their off days, and you tend to have your off days like it when you're coming back after a break, but not always. Sometimes sometimes if you had like a really good break and you had time to digest and process things, sometimes you come back even stronger. For me, I'm kind of feeling like I'll get it back. Like I'm definitely not in the good drawing shape I was last week. So I'm just taking it and kind of pacing myself and seeing where this goes without beating myself up. But I don't have the control that I was getting last week. But that's okay. I mean, that's why you practice. Anytime you get out of practice, you practice to get back into practice. And that's why I'm doing these classes, because it's a way to keep me regular. Another thing is like Monday's class, we did some fun stuff, but overall I don't think the class was the way the class went was as effective as I would have wanted it to be, because it kind of lacked focus. Like it was a very experimental class to see what would happen if we just jumped right in with doing cinematic studies and stuff, but it resulted in it being a little bit unfocused, and I got some more insight into how I would like make focus things after the class ended. Like I do want to do cinematic studies type stuff like that, or more kind of directed storyboard oriented, playing with storyboard mechanics type stuff like that. But I think there has to be like a point to it, like a very specific directed point to it to concentrate people's energies and stuff. Okay, Google, stop. So Monday kind of threw me off my rhythm a little bit, and then I got tired. And then I got tired the next day, but it's okay. You live and learn. I'm kind of learning what works for me with my practice rhythms, and I'm thinking I want to kind of refocus things more. So this Saturday, I'll be kind of merging what we do with storyboards with what we do with figure drawing. So we'll have time to actually practice these mechanics in a storyboarding context, but with a focused structure and purpose and intent for it. All right, that's my warm-up set. Feel free to post your warm-up sets in the Discord as usual. And we'll take a little 5-10 minute break. Yeah, we'll take a okay Google set timer 10 minutes. Okay Google set timer 10 minutes.
10 minutes, starting now.
There we go. We'll probably come back a little early from the break though. So our next set, we should probably do it on 2s because it'll give us more time to really think about it. Stuff, but yeah, it'll give us more time to kind of think with the poses and so on. But what we're going to be covering today is we're going to be covering depth cues, and I've got some handouts in class about about strategies for handling that. So we'll talk some more about these when we come back from the break in about 5 or 10 minutes or so. But these are available in the, and they're just kind of like shorthand notes I made about some of the stuff we're going to be covering today. But these are kind of like, these are techniques that Disney animators and Disney and Pixar animators use in their figure drawing sessions for adding cues of depth and pushing a illusion of depth in their quick sketches. How they play with it, how they play with depth and play with space and depth in the figure. One of the biggest ones is a floor grid. I'm going to be having you guys get used to using floor grids or something similar to it, like add in shadows that kind of serve the same purpose as a floor grid, or this kind of jump rope sort of thing to sort of correlate the placement of the feet together. There's 3 different approaches right here. The main one we're going to be trying to steer ourselves towards is the tune. I'm not completely warmed up with using that, so you're going to probably see me dip more into like these 2 a little bit more tonight. I'm going to try to push myself towards this, but again, I'm coming back a little bit rusty from an off day, so from a break day and kind of an off practice day. So, so a lot of what I'm going to be doing is me kind of trying to rekindle my visual memory so that I can handle this stuff a little better, and we'll see how things pan out towards the end. Thing about when you come back when you're having an off day, if you struggle and you try to put in good practice mileage and stuff, you come back in when you're rusty. If you put good practice mileage the next day, everything's much easier, and things start clicking again. That's always what it's been like for me. So that's normally that happens on Monday, but this week we did things a little bit differently. So Monday, which was supposed to be my day for kind of rebooting things, got kind of a little loosey-goosey because of the experimental practice session we did. So now basically we're kind of doing the Monday reboot sort of thing that I would normally do today. But that's cool. I mean, I'm slowly kind of learning through trial and error how best I practiced and learned and stuff, and I'm hoping that you guys kind of figure that out for yourselves too. But there's no like secret formula to this stuff, it works differently. Like this kind of like how you practice and how you process and learn things is different for everyone. But I would say that the one of the most consistent ways that people get better and they get good rhythm is they put in good study hours every day. Because if you miss a day of figure drawing, you're inherently going to get rusty immediately, even just one day. That's just how it is. Because drawing.
What do you think?
What's up?
Yeah, I had a question. What do you think about some artists that advise to practice about like 10 hours a day or something?
Yeah, well, the 10 hours a day that you're talking about, that's more for like production work than practice. It really depends though. It depends, like when they say a 10-hour day, they often have like interval breaks. So
Yeah,
you want to find out what the interval breaks are like that they use to keep from getting burned out. Uh, you also want to find out like how often they spend like just like sitting and observing without moving their hand and thinking about what they're going to do. But yeah, like 10 hours is like, if you want to be a professional, you've got to eventually aim to be able to handle like a 10-hour work shift on something. You're not going to be doing that all the time because 10 hours is kind of brutal to do too much. But you want to have the ability and the capacity to do that. That's what I'm kind of working myself up towards. I'm hoping next week. This week I'm focusing on trying to get 6 to 8 hours of practice a day. And today, combined with what we're doing here, my practice is going to total up close to 8 hours after we get done with today's session. And tomorrow I'm going to try to get 6 to 8 hours again. And then Friday, same thing. I'll try to aim for another 8 hours. Saturday, similar sort of thing. And Saturday is not going to be Saturday's class is going to be steered in the direction of getting us to do Starman poses and stuff. I'll figure out a productive way to do that. I'm going to do some brainstorming on Thursday and Friday to figure out how we're going to do that. I'll look into like seeing what some storyboard artist drawing exercises might be something that we could do for Saturday. Something that would be very productive and very helpful at the stage that we're at. It would be complementary to the animator gesture drawing that we've been doing for the last few weeks. But yeah, I want to get us to get that good, confident rhythm going, where we keep building on what we're doing and we keep focusing. Okay, Google, how much time left on timer? Okay, Google, how much time left on timer? Oh my God.
There's 2 minutes and 17 seconds remaining.
Hope the bitrate on the stream is okay, because I just had a huge dip in lost frames just now, and I hope that yeah, it seems to be fluctuating quite a bit right now. It's kind of weird. Anyway, give me a second. I'm going to hit the restroom real quick, and then we'll get back to another figure drawing set. This next set will be 2-minute poses. I'm going to talk a little bit more about depth cues while we go through these. So I'll be right back. And we're back. Okay, Google, stop timer. Okay, Google, stop timer.
No problem. Consider it canceled.
Alrighty, so this guy here. Let's get a quick snapshot of him. And we'll do a little draw over study, because those are good to do when you're rusty. And I'll talk a little bit more about depth cues using this guy before we go into a time pose set of 10 to 20 minutes of poses. But first, I want to direct people's attention to the handouts that are in the Discord right here. If you are joining us in Twitch, you can join our Discord with the Discord link that I've just put on screen. Oh, nice. There we go. Already playing with the foot. These are really nice, actually. Good job. Good job, Sketchy Face. Those have good feeling to them. I like the feel of these, and I can already when you start adding. I like the feel of these, and they are looking a little flat. But that's exactly what this class is going to help you with. We're going to be like these, like you have a good sense of the flow of the line of action and stuff. But now we're going to add depth and like pitch this stuff into kind of like three-dimensional illusion a little bit today.
Thank you.
These are looking nice. I'm really impressed with like how far people are coming. Like I would actually love to see like if you have records of your previous work when you first started. When you first started this stuff with me about like 4 or 5 weeks ago versus now, I would like to see you compare your work, because there are a lot of people that are making a lot of progress. Yeah, those are pretty nice warm-ups for the most part. These are good looking, little chicken scratchy, I would say. But I mean, like, try to pull longer lines, even if you're doing line spillover, or at the very least, like, don't lift your pencil off the page when you're trying to sculpt out a figure or something. Like, try to do something that will get you more confidence. Yeah, these are I can see like the purpose and intentionality starting to come through these. Like, these ones by Sketchy Face are pretty nicely expressive. There's a boldness and a sense of exaggeration and to the 3D plane that the characters are standing on. A little kind of messing with like shorthand, down tilt and up tilt stuff. You want to just play with these tools freely. But yeah, so if you want to follow along, you can screen. Well, actually, let me maybe I can copy paste this guy into chat. Can I do that? Yeah, I can. All right. So if you want to do a draw over too to kind of mess with the depth cues, you can use this guy that I just uploaded to chat. So now we're going to go through. I'm going to talk a little bit about depth cues. So on the handout that I gave you, there was one thing that I left out, and that is negative space. And negative space, you can see there's some negative space right there. There's negative space right here. Negative space is areas that that the pose or the silhouette is not occupying. Keep an eye out for that, because in this case, for like a depth cue, this negative space differentiates this arm from this body in the silhouette. And that makes it easier to read the depth of that. Now, this guy right here, like if you fill that in with a silhouette, it just looks like this. So we don't really get, there is depth cues right here, like on the top of the knuckle and stuff like that. But let's say you wanted to make this, you wanted to like exaggerate the silhouette or adjust the silhouette to make it a quicker read and make the depth read more. You could push the hand out over that way and then like separate the hand from the body a little bit more or something. And then create some negative space in there. But anyway. So, when you're approaching these, obviously, first thing you want to go for is you want to find what you want to observe what the line of action is. That goes back to the first week of our class. Now, believe it or not, this line of action right here, I want you to stop thinking of this as a 2D shape. This line of action is a 3D shape. This thing is moving with Z depth. And by Z depth, I mean like you got the X and the Y axis moving horizontally and vertically, and then the Z depth is moving in and out towards us and away from us. So this line right here, even though it's kind of flowing like that, it's bending toward, with like, in your mind, I want you to picture it bending towards you, wherever, like, I want you to learn how to read this as if, as your shorthand, as if like you could play off of it and think about where it's bending towards us. Like, where is that line of action going towards us in zeta? Look at, you see right here? Right here where I changed the direction, right there, where the foot is. That kind of helps with a little bit of a depth cue right there for me. Like, me wrapping my head around the fact that this is something that's occurring in Z depth. And I've kind of darkened in very slightly parts of the line of action here, to give myself a little depth cue. That's just like one strategy you can use for figuring out the depth of a drawing. So we'll add some secondary line of actions right here for the legs and the limbs here. We'll see what else we can do to play with this. So some other strategies. Depth is about giving an impression of that there's like the rules of perspective are coming into play here. But it's like shorthand faked rules of perspective. It's not going to be accurate to like a true vanishing point or something. But what you can do is you can kind of like approximate about where the vanishing point would be, like this. This is like what I approximate what my vanishing point might like where the lines for this might be going to, like a vanishing point on or something. You just start thinking in those terms. You can kind of visualize it from seeing this guy here, like the tilt of his hips, the fact that like one foot is down here and this foot is up here, like that's the perspective of your floor grid. Well, it's not just that, but it's also like where his feet are placed too. Like his feet are not perfectly lined up with each other. He's in a fighter stance, so like one foot is kind of at a different angle than the other. You can correlate the feet to each other with this kind of thing that I like to call the jump rope. Kind of wrap your head around the dimensionality of how the feet are correlating to each other. You can do that with like with fists and other limbs and stuff too, and like the thighs and the kneecaps. It's any kind of thing that helps you wrap your head around the depth of what's happening here. Another depth cue to go with the direction of the head. Like our good old buddy, the double ellipse right here. The really simple animator's figure drawing head. Depending on how you pitch that can give you another depth cue. As can the old crisscross cross bun ellipses on a sphere. Like the Disney head sphere, where you have the cartoon eyes riding on or below wherever you put the eye line. But yeah, I mean, that's one strategy right there. Another strategy. Oh, so that you pay attention to the tilt of the shoulders versus the tilt of the hips. It's more depth cues. And here's another one. This one's a very Disney-oriented depth cue, and that is when you have like a three-quarter view head, like this. Or actually, let me show that. Maybe show it with like kind of a Mickey Mouse head. So it's often traditional in when like a Mickey or like a traditional like kind of Disney cartoon character, when you have them at like a three-quarter angle, you artificially kind of shrink the eye that's going away, that's like further away from you, as kind of a little forced perspective thing. Like you don't want them to look googly, but you want them to like look like that it's got a little bit of perspective depth. It's just like a little fake shorthand thing. Like these are all little fake shorthand tricks to kind of fake the rules of fake and play with the rules of perspective. And also that you can you use them in conjunction with kind of more sculpting oriented tools where you're almost kind of sculpting in 3 dimensions. Here's another one, for example. This was a technique that you'll see on the handouts called the tornado, which this can help you start to wrap your head around how depth works. You basically use concentric circles of like these ellipses that are kind of turned towards us or more away from us, depending on what direction things are going. Like if a, let's say a forearm is reaching towards us, looks something like this. If it's turned slightly down, it looks something like this. If it's turned a little bit of ways from us to the side, it looks more like this. If it's like really almost like parallel with us, it'd look more like this. So you can like use these kind of like concentric circles without really lifting your pencil to kind of sculpt a figure. And they're a wonderful tool for if you have trouble kind of visualizing depth of what you're drawing, or the angle or the volume of what you're drawing, then these things are a wonderful tool to sort of wrap your head around that, as they immediately signify direction, and they start engaging with the like the 3-dimensional thinking part of your brain. And the cool thing is you can take like something like your line of action that's a little bit more 2-dimensional, and you can use that as something to riff off of. Or you can just like jump right in and you can like embed your line of action directly in the curve of your tornado. So that's another strategy. And the one that we want to aim for is something that is a figure that sort of builds on the things that we've been learning for the last few weeks. And here, let me show you another few more strategies with this. So one is darkening in the limb that's further away from us. Another is this limb is smaller because it's further away. This limb is larger because it's closer to us. And it's more exaggerated than what you're seeing over there. Or there. And like I said, you can play with changing the negative space of the image so that it makes for a stronger silhouette read, and so you have more depth cues to work with. This is just like a quick and dirty example. Like, you can do it however you want, but let me show you like a really extreme example of like how I might exaggerate this pose, because I have an idea for that right now. So like this guy, you could take him and you could like really riff on it, like just go really nuts with pushing the perspective. So some of you may have seen like some like 90s binder art, like airbrush 90s binder art that has like really crazy warped fisheye perspective and stuff in it. Those would be something to think about when you do these. Let me see if I can find some good examples. 90s binder airbrush art. These. So if we've got some, oh, here's a good example right here. This is, yeah, this kind of stuff. You see how, like, just warped and distorted that is? Like, just how crazy exaggerated. This is not accurate to how real perspective works at all. But it's fucking fun to look at, and it still feels like it's got depth to it and stuff. Its own exaggerated, rhythmic version of depth. Yeah, like this kind of stuff right here. This is just like some possibilities of how you could like play with this stuff. I mean, you see this kind of stuff, you see this kind of exaggeration happening all over the place in even like a lot of modern video game concept art these days has a lot of stuff like that. Like there's stuff that I saw for the Crash Bandicoot games the artist had done that was about that warped. In fact, let me bring up some of that. It's pretty easy to find that stuff on ArtStation. So Crash. Let's see here. Yeah, see, look, this concept art of Crash here, or this is a personal study that somebody did, but this shows it off a little bit of what I'm talking about. Yeah, this is fan art. There is official art in here too. Here we go. Yeah. So like this is not like accurate perspective at all, but it has like a kind of like a cartoon impression of it, of perspective and depth and stuff. And this, what you're seeing right here is like this is an application of the principles of the stuff that we're trying to practice today, basically. This also, even though at first glance this looks like might be a little flat, you can see that these characters have like the tilt, and then you can see like the Disney stuff, or like one eye's the eye that's going away from us tends to be smaller. Well, in this case, he's like kind of exaggerating one eye that he's making expression with. But you can kind of see that on the goggles there, and on this, like, see that's bigger, that's going away from us, so that's slightly smaller. That gauntlet is smaller, it's going away from us, and it's also tilted away from us. We can see the plane changes on it and stuff. We can see the tilt of the shoulders, we see the top of the shoulders. This shoulder pad is smaller than that one because it's going away from us. This shoulder pad is smaller than that one because this one is towards us, and so on. I think this gauntlet is a little bit bigger than this one because this one's closer to us. You can see that here with Crash. Like, that exaggerated foot back there is smaller than this foot that's more close to us. This is an exaggerated cartoon fake perspective. You can even see it on these. These is a copy paste fruit right here. They just all they did was shrink it. It's quick shorthand. You can see like there's like a sort of a loose idea that these are going towards a vanishing point, but it's not perfect, and it's not perfect because it's like kind of a loose sketch that still has like a sense of depth to it. And you can't really like with forms this organic and this exaggerated, you can't really be like too didactic about your use of perspective. Like there's still a good sense of perspective, but this is somebody who has a good understanding of perspective enough to be able to play with making something like this, like play with the rules to make an exaggerated thing like that. But yeah, those are some good examples for sure. This is like a animation. This is almost kind of like animation rough layout art right here. So yeah, it's really cool shit. So let's see here. Let's put this guy away. How much time do we have? We burned quite a bit of time on that. So I'll give us about 10 minutes to do 10 2-minute poses, or like 5 2-minute poses or so, and then we'll get back to and then we'll do a 5-minute break, and then we'll get pose marathon sessions under our belt together. So, okay, Google, set timer for 10 minutes. Okay, Google, set timer for 10 minutes.
10 minutes, and we're starting now.
So there's a lot of information to go through. Whoops. So there's a lot of information to go through on those handouts that I gave today. I'm going to try to get through most of it, but we're going to be able to cover it more in depth and with some more focus also for the next class on Friday. But yeah, if you need some help or some cues to work off of for how to play with this stuff, like looking at stuff like the Crash Bandicoot art, Crash Bandicoot 4 art, the concept art for the game is definitely a great source. A lot of the artists on that have like principles of like classic, very kind of Disney-ish cartooning that they apply with like bendy shapes and like false depth, false perspective type stuff. Yeah, let's look for opportunities in these. Like here, I'm doing like a little box for the hand right there to show like the plane difference on that fist. Look for little opportunities to add little depth cues, stuff. Remember, you're not going for perfection, you're just trying to play with the rules here. See what happens when you do certain things and stuff. Like, I'm experimenting with darkening in the underside of the legs. Right there. I didn't give myself a lot of space to draw these, so I'm going to shrink that down a bit. This guy here, he does have a very clear floor grid, but his pose is very feels very flat to me. So when you get faced with one of these poses, immediately start thinking about what you can do to exaggerate the depth. How can you change the pose to give more depth cues? So remember the reason why you're giving depth cues to these is you're trying to create an illusion of something on page. And if you just copy what you're seeing with the photograph, it's going to inherently look more flat than it would if you exercised your ability to make some quick judgments about like stuff that would help kind of turn it into a 3D a more 3D-ish form, or an illusion of one on page. So this guy, I'm thinking like maybe I do give him a floor grid. Then I add some like loose kind of vanishing point traveling lines along his body to start wrapping my head around playing with these rules. So this one's also a very flat pose. So how would you make this have more depth? Well, one way is you can turn your foot more towards the camera. Maybe you do something like this. Like you say, I'm going to say like the horizon line is about here-ish. So these kind of concentric circles that I'm doing for the volume of the body that wrap up would change direction as they go down. And then as they go up, they change the other way. And that plays with the underside of the hat here. Get more of the underside of the chin. We shrink this foot. It's really small back there. Wrap that arm over the body more. It's okay to make these messy because you're just trying to like get used to using these tools. You're not trying to go for good drawings here, you're just trying to play with these tools and see what happens. And good drawings will start coming out of them just as a result of getting more in the groove with using them. So I'm going to add a little bit of shadow down here. So we got two figures here. You definitely see that there is depth in the image. Got this very, very lanky runner guy and a shorter lady running with him, who he looks really, really lanky, and she looks more like she looks almost like a kickboxer. I want to say like a young kickboxer. And he's more like he's more like a lanky marathon runner. So we got this leg that's coming more towards us, this leg that's going away from us. Make sure I darken that in more. Get a little floor grid going there. Not going to worry too much about her. I'm going to concentrate on him. At least for now. Maybe I can like throw in a quick impression of her and use her as a depth cue in the little time I have left. So let's maybe try to use her negative space a little bit. Even if we're not like doing her whole drawing in full detail back there. Just shade in her outline just very slightly. There we go. So this one we have definitely a very well-defined floor grid. I would say that for this one you could concentrate on the head. I'm going to try making like a really kind of angular, well-defined head tilt. I'm going to see what I can do with the body. Create an overall impression of it. Plant the foot. Get this kind of floor grid going here. Sort of mimic some of the literal grid we're looking at with the tiling in the scene itself. So I'm not too sure about his center of gravity here. I'm worried if... Well, he's probably going to look like a little bit off balance. Maybe I can try to balance him out a bit. Pushing his hand out. I pushed this hand out a little bit further than I was originally going to, so I could kind of make him look a little bit more balanced. So he's got this leg that's coming towards us, and this leg that's a little bit behind us. It's kind of peeking back there. I darken that in black. So I do have like a clear plane change on his head there. His head's almost kind of like a box shape. Just got like a plane change on the front of his foot there. Okay, Google, stop. Let's go back to him real quick. And these don't have to be like hugely overly complicated, like you're just trying to get like a few depth cues down. In this case, I'm spending the time. Another strategy that you can use is if you've done one of these drawings and done it like much more gesturally, you can go back in during the break and punch up the depth cues a little bit more. For example, on this guy, I could go back in, I could add in more darkening on the underside of his limbs, add more of an impression of the shadow underneath him. So if you notice when you zoom back, whoops. When you zoom back from these, like, these aren't the world's greatest drawings, but by any stretch, but you can still kind of mostly understand what's happening in them, and you can kind of see like how they make sense in depth a little bit. Like this area right here, since I paid close attention to it, when you zoom back from it, you can tell like what one foot in front of the other. You can tell what direction his head is turning. This one's a little less successful, but you can kind of, and I think I can differentiate that a little bit better by making that leg lighter. But the end result you should be aiming for is to try to make these like readable when you pull back from them. Like you can mostly tell what's going on in them. When you zoom back, you can mostly tell what direction things are in and so on. Just organizing these for the page. Okay, Google, set timer for 3 minutes.
3 minutes, and we're starting now.
Alright, let's take a look and see what people are doing in chat. So Red T is trying to mess with the... Yeah, I see Red T is going through that initial process where like you're trying to exaggerate stuff and things are kind of getting kind of gushy, and then eventually you start settling into a rhythm of how to how to push it. Some things there. I think that I'd probably want to push this limit over here. There's a few other things I could probably push. I think though you're headed in the right direction with those legs though. Let's see here. Drawovers, rhythmic yeah, yeah, playing with the depth cues, trying to see if you can push and exaggerate. Yeah. That's the kind of stuff we want to be wrapping our heads around. Yeah, I see you're putting it in your ground plane and stuff. You start getting used to using this stuff every day, basically. Like you can see how Sketchy Face is starting to get pretty confident with using these grids because they've been using them a lot. That's what you want to do. Oh, that's looking pretty good right there. Sketchy Face really playing with bending and warping the perspective that the figure's standing on. This is a really good example right here. Look at that. So their depth cues are they bent this upwards, they bent this downwards to kind of give us an illusion of depth in the change between the tilt and the up and lower hips. And the other depth cues are this arm is smaller, this arm is more towards us ish, so it's kind of larger. It is going behind the body too, but this arm kind of feels larger. This foot is closer towards us, so it's bigger. This foot is further towards us, so it's smaller. Maybe even chop off a little bit more from there. But it's also got these kind of triangle wedges that are kind of placed on the warped perspective ground. Right there. Yeah, playing with more of the mechanics of this stuff. Yeah, I mean, all of it's just like we're just trying to like engage with this stuff to start thinking of how these things work in three-dimensional space. We're not going for perfection. We're just trying to get like a little smattering of how these forms operate. Also, there's a couple other handouts. Okay, Google, stop. There's a couple handouts from last week, which will also give some further context of the stuff that we're practicing tonight. I'm going to make sure I upload those to chat here. One of them, this last one is not by me. The one on heads is not by me, but this one goes more in depth on how to handle those two sphere heads. Yeah, it's this kind of stuff like straights against curves, using a cuneiform line of action. Some examples of shorthands for hands and feet and shorthand heads. Using like a cascading waterfall effect for getting good rhythm in your poses, pushing the pose, and so on. Let's see it. I think there's another handout in here from last week too. Oh yeah, it was this one. Yeah, look for opportunity to add purpose and exaggeration to the pose. Like you want to think about what the pose is doing and why, what the figure is thinking and feeling, and push and exaggerate that. So on that note, for this next set, I think we'll make this ones for this next set. And I'm going to have people focus on the tornado for this one to really just kind of mass in the forms. So this is going to be a 1 minute set with the tornado. The tornado is hang on. The tornado is this guy right here. It's probably not the best example of the tornado, but basically like you use concentric kind of spiral circles. You can start with a gesture line if you want to, or you can freehand sculpt it, but we'll be using this for this. And you can even hybrid it up a bit, but we're going to be using it for this, and we're going to be using it as one of the main things for our depth cues. So, okay, Google, set timer for 20 minutes, 30 seconds. Okay, Google, set timer for 20 minutes, 30 seconds.
20 minutes and 30 seconds. And we're starting now.
Okay, we're starting now. So I'm probably going to like use a little bit of a hybrid of the tornado for mine, which means that some areas are going to be more tornado-like and other areas won't be. This is a pretty complicated pose. So I'm gonna like decide where the area of my most attention is for this pose and focus there. In this case, I'm just gonna probably do the upper body and not worry about the lower body. So I'm just kind of getting in tune with this technique right now. Right. So these guys right here, to make this quick, and I'll probably have to draw smaller than how I'm drawing right now, honestly. I'm just gonna do this pose, not the other guy. This one. So I'm just starting to get warmed up to this technique. But doing this is going to help me see the depth of stuff and the direction of things a little bit easier when I'm using other techniques. Let's see. This is a pretty complicated pose. So maybe you don't do a tornado over the whole thing. Just pick an area in the minute that you have to do one. Like in this case, I chose this guy's thigh and his calf because they're doing something very interesting to me. And I kind of want to think about what's happening there a little bit. So like the calf is coming down. Thigh is coming somewhat towards us. Calf is going mostly down and the ankle is turned towards us. So for this guy right here, I think I'm going to start settling more into getting more confident with using my tornado. And just jump right in and go for it. going to do a quick few invented poses with the tornado right here to kind of recalibrate myself to the size and the ratio that I need to be drawing at for getting these down. There we go. So I'm drawing really, really itty-bitty to kind of narrow my focus and my visual concentration on using this. Because using these kind of spiraling shapes eats up a lot of hand drawing time. But if I can capture the pose, with like a very, very small quick gestural study like that, then I can blow up the ideas larger. Also, you don't want to do it in excess, but like if you don't have a good drawing angle, or very good sized drawing space to work with, it's sometimes okay to draw from your wrist if you're drawing extremely tiny and not for like a huge period of time. So it's not unheard of to do like studies about this, like kind of postage stamp sized studies about this size in your sketchbook. Okay, we got a few minutes, just doodle down something like this. Look at that, like once you start getting into the groove with using this, like you can start kind of like getting an overall sense of the picture, the big picture of how the stuff gets pitched into depth and how it like plays into the rhythms off itself a little bit. Like you see how like the tornado is kind of going in sort of a warp perspective, sort of vanishing point thing right here with how this body's curved. That guy in the foreground there would be great to do some depth studies on his arm back there. It's coming more towards us for sure. I'm going to throw down a quick impression of him there. So for this one, I'm going to do like a little kind of a hybrid. Use a cube for the pelvis. Spheres for the joints and egg for the rib cage, but then I'm going to use tornado for the segments of the limb, for the spaces and the fleshy parts in between, like the bony parts of the masses of the body, like the knees, very, very bony. The calf, technically the front of the shin isn't very bony, but the calf is very fleshy. thighs are very fleshy. You can think of this guy as basically being one big tube that's changing direction and depth in space. Doing this technique gets really fun, especially like when you look at your page a little while later and it's full of like tiny little figures that are pretty easy at a glance to tell what they're doing. Anyway, the point of doing the tornado is you're not supposed to do it all the time. You're supposed to do it. Well, you can use it to like work out drawing problems. It's a fantastic. The tornado is a fantastic tool to use to like solve problems of foreshortening. But it's a technique that you kind of want to warm up with and get in tune with to kind of like get your brain going, thinking about how stuff wraps over things, and then you start drawing fewer lines because you don't need to draw like all those kind of concentric circle depth cues anymore once you've warmed up to thinking that way. Like you can describe the same thing with fewer lines. We skipped this pose earlier, but let's stick with it now this time. So you got that arm going that way. You got this arm that's kind of going up, but going very slightly away from us.
Sorry, did you say something? You
What?
kind of broke up a little bit.
Oh, nothing. I was just remarking about the pose here. So I'm kind of blowing up how much of this I'm working on now, because now I'm starting to kind of feel like my visual ability to analyze the pose starting to get warmed up from doing those little tornado studies. So I'm going to start moving a little bit away from the tornado, but I might dip back into it if I feel I need to kind of engage with that part of my brain a little bit more. So for example, instead of doing a whole tornado, you just do like a few depth cues here, like for the end points of a cylinder, for example, instead of the whole thing. But now you can visualize those a little easier because you've done the tornado. And this is a really, really great one to practice with depth on. I'm going to try to get my overall impression of it as best I can, as quickly as I can. Just going to be bold about it. Just go for it. From the exaggerated perspective used on it, they look like a couple of gods fighting. A couple of giant monsters. Kaiju boxers. Okay, Google, how much time left on timer?
There's 6 minutes and 5 seconds left.
Cool. I would invite people to try playing with this kind of stuff in your own cartooning. See what you can do with exaggerating your characters and stuff. Look at like the Crash Bandicoot art, concept art that, or stuff in that vein. There's a bunch of stuff for Spyro, also by a lot of the same artists. In fact, that's also up there. The Spyro Reignited trilogy. There we go. Our old pal, the floor grid, has returned. And now I'm feeling sufficiently back in tune with being able to handle the depth cues while keeping things nice and rhythmical. So this lady's jogging. She's above the ground, a little shadow. Show that she's off the ground a bit. Shade the underside of her shoe. Add some depth cues to her thigh, turning away from us and turning towards us. Center of her body. Kind of a rhythmic. Shrink that arm back there. Still put a little stupid face right there. So in this case, I'm actually going to change the angle of this slightly to exaggerate the depth. I'm going to make the foot really big. Turn the foot towards us, turn the body away from us. Shrink the head. Shrink this leg. Give a floor grid that's really exaggerated down there. So start playing with the depth cues to like change the pose or change the angle you're looking at the pose from when you start feeling comfortable with this. Remember, these are not going to be realistic drawings. These are cartoon drawings where you're trying to play with posing and angle and stuff. So let's see, what depth cues can I add to this? Her belt. The belts are good depth cues, especially on karate gis. You can see there's a depth cue here of like the back of her shoulder and versus the back of her arm like that. Or this guy. Is it a guy or a gal? Looks like it's a gal. Get a little floor grid down here. So believe it or not, gesture drawing in perspective is literally like the guts of like most things you'll be animating or storyboarding for that matter. Gesture drawing in perspective is key to being a good animator, a good storyboard artist. Like your rough animation your storyboards and everything, those are all going to involve gesture drawing in perspective. So for this guy right here, some depth cues to work with. The sleeve of his robe. The underside of the robe. The waistline. Tilt of the waistline and the tilt versus the tilt of the shoulder. The other sleeve back there. Make that smaller. Darken that in too. And then there's kind of like an overlap, the drapery right here. But we're not going to worry too much about the finer details of that. Kind of guesstimate about where his feet are placed. Keep some simple feet. Oh, let's get this phone. Let's get that one. You see? Let's maybe shrink this guy right here so I can have more room to draw on. I kind of drew him a little large. We'll make this one our last pose for this set. Okay, Google, stop. So maybe I'll pause on this guy right here, just so we spend a little bit more time on him. So immediately one depth cue to work with, obviously how he's got his hand planted there on that very floor gritty ground. Remember, the essence of this is gesture drawing in perspective, so you want gesture drawing to drive what you're doing. You want to look for opportunities to warp it in perspective or layer perspective or depth cues into it. Like, for example, this plane right here at the bottom of the sole of the shoe. The plane right over here at the bottom of this sole of this shoe. His buttocks right here. The back of his hand right here. Get a little tornado opportunity right here with the fabric direction on his sweatshirt. Got the cuff of the pants right here that's coming up. Use that as a cue for depth. Use his hat as a cue for depth. Got the brim right there sticking out. The top of it right here. It's got that hoodie in the back there, but I'm just going to mask that in. Side plane of his buttocks there, his hip. Negative space right here. There's negative space here. There's negative space here. You see, it's really, really messy, and it's like all about messing with the mechanics here, but we're starting to understand what's happening here a little more. This guy starts to turn into a little bit of a roadmap for like kind of figure out how to read a complex pose like this. And like during the break, you can go in and you can add stuff in there, like you can darken the underside of things to make them pop more. And add little things like that. Okay, Google, set timer for 3 minutes.
3 minutes, and that's starting now.
So I think we're on a pretty good rhythm now, so we're going to keep going after the next break. We'll keep going for another hour and 15 minutes or so, I want to say. For another 2 to 3 sets of figure poses. So let's see what people have posted so far. Oh, that's nice. Pushing the foot, yeah, pushing the fist more. That's interesting. Yeah, another thing you can do that like poses like these is like you don't have to be limited by the pose that you saw. You can like invent stuff playing off of it for like very different things. Like this is really fun. Yeah. This is exactly what I was kind of expecting where things would go. Like usually how it goes is like you try a pose, you try to push things, you're seeing some things that you want to kind of push into, but then like it's not really kind of coming together with a pose like this. Then you start playing with it more and you start liberating yourself more to say something more cool or fun with it, and you start repositioning limbs and changing the pose up, playing off the initial pose that you got with something like this. And this is another crack at playing with some of the same ideas. Like you might wind up at an endpoint that's quite a bit different than the pose that you started with. It's getting a smattering of everything. People doing the tornado. Kind of cueing into those depth cues. Yeah. So a nice feel. I want people to get much sharper and more decisive. Well, much more sharper and much more decisive with their decisions. Like it's the you want to kind of remember the Bruce Lee line of like, or no, was it Muhammad Ali who said it actually? But float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, kind of thing. So you want a mix of like the flowy kind of lyrical, gestural flow stuff, and then you also want parts where it turns sharp and harsh, and has like impact to it. Like let me see, because you want that contrast. You want the flowing line. Let me see if I can find it. If I can show a good example of how that principle works. So you got like it's kind of really kind of flowy lyrical line, and then it sharply changes angle, right? Well, or right, like changes angle like right here. And decisively, like this person who drew this made like a really decisive decision about that or something. Okay, Google, stop. Or let's see, maybe a good example would be from this, like then like sharp, harsh angles for the palm on the ground, but kind of lyrical up for the upper body, except like right here where it changes direction for the knee joint, and the foot, for example. There's all kinds of strategies you can deploy for that, like one that we might go back to is the bow and the arrow for how to handle the torso. Where you like when you see a torso that's bent or tilted, you make very decisive decisions about which side is the which side is the bow, which side is the arrow. The bendy bow or the sharp angular arrow. Like it might not, the actual pose might not be that extreme. But remember, it's those straights against curves that give that sense of contrast and vitality to the pose. You want a mix of anchoring with straights and confident line choices for your straights, and you want that playing against and contrasting the more lyrical flowy stuff of the curves. So we're gonna go to another set now. Okay, Google, set timer for 20 minutes. Okay, Google, set timer for 20 minutes, 30 seconds.
20 minutes, and that's starting now.
Okay, Google, add 30 seconds to timer. Google. Okay, Google, add 30 seconds to timer.
Done. 30 seconds added to your 20-minute timer. You've got 20 minutes and 29 seconds left.
All right, here we go. So now that we're kind of getting to the rhythm with this, remember, I want you guys playing with those depth cues, but I kind of want you to go to kind of like a Zen state where you're playing with this. Like, these are still like gestural forces that you're playing with. This is gesture drawing in perspective. So that means once you start to get kind of more warmed up to it, you can kind of make decisions on the fly really quickly about what the depth of stuff is or where to add depth. Like the bottom of that shoe, let's add some floor. Down to the bottom of that. Tennis racket for that plane change there. Shrink that guy down here. So this gal, we got a minute to draw her, so jump right in and look for those depth cues to play with. In this case, her foot, I'm going to turn it more away from us than how it is there. Turn the top of her torso up a little bit. Shrink your foot up top there. Maybe grow her foot down there a bit. Add a little bit of negative space there. Here's a good opportunity to play with those decisive line angles containing the pose. I'm using these rhythms on the waist and the pectoral, underside of the pectorals to kind of play with the depth there. Beefing up his boxing glove a bit, shrinking this one over here. Showing head direction there. Just going to really exaggerate the action here. So this lady is a vignette pose, but that's still an opportunity to look for some like some depth cues. In this case, I'm using the square of her buttocks. To play with the twist of her upper torso. Then we have this very small hand back there. So we can see the underside of this guy's turned forward body. You can see the top of his shoulders. So I'm going to push his arm up there so his arm's a little smaller. His other arm's going to be a little larger. This leg's going to be larger. That leg's going to be smaller. This leg and that foot are going to be larger. That leg's going to be smaller. And then we get a quick grid. There we go. So the first depth cue that I say I'm going to use for this is the head and how the eye line wraps over the head, and I'm going to use that as a rhythm to kind of determine how I play with the rest of the pose. So I got that, got this, and that helps kind of establish everything else for me. I've got like a pseudo vanishing point somewhere over there created by these rhythm lines playing throughout the whole pose. So this leg is closer to us, so this leg is larger. This leg is further from us, so that leg is slightly smaller. I'm going to use this as an opportunity to practice the Toonie style. Which means trying to use like simplified cartoon depth cues over the figure. Let's make sure I make this leg even smaller, so it's further away from us. Push that heel down a little bit more. So this guy, that foot gets exaggerated, and they use that as something to play the rest of the play off the rest of the pose. Really tiny leg back there. Beef up that leg up there. Create a little ground shadow there. And a little ground plane. I'm going to start with some gestures with some planted feet. I'm going to correlate these feet to each other using a kind of a little circle here. So that I can place the toes somewhere around here. It feels pretty good to me. Then I can kind of play off that circle that I've made on the ground for the rest of the pose. For the rhythms and choices I make. I'll make his torso seem like it's going away from us a little bit more with a bit of tornado action there. Keep this leg smaller. We've encountered this lady before. So I'm going to exaggerate it a bit. He's coming towards us. Let's maybe have her arm change position like this, because that feels nicer to me. So I'm going to use her head and her eye line to kind of play off of the rest of the pose, I think. Without drawing a whole tornado, I'm going to use a few of the tornado rhythms to help me find my depth cues. And then that's enough for me to get kind of a floor grid going. Place that, push that foot up a little bit more. Let's push it up there. Shrink that thigh. It's going away from us in space. And then maybe play with exaggerating the tilt of the shoulders there. Remember, there's not enough time to get everything down. You want to get like a smattering of some decisions. Get a... See how much you can get down, and then try to maybe scale back how much you try to get down as you start getting more of a feel for it. So I've exaggerated this lady before. Like really shrunken her head and stuff. Whoops. It's a little odd. There we go. Okay. So I'm not new to her pose. Okay, Google, how much time left on timer?
T-minus 8 minutes and 2 seconds.
Very good. So we got another hour of this. Or, yeah. Got another 2 sets for the evening. Should be pretty nice. Correlate the knees to each other. See what depth cues I can add in the little time we have left. The next set, I think I'm going to move it back to 2s, so that we can spend more time kind of digesting depth cues again. So in this case, I'm going to kind of exaggerate the placement of the feet. An angle, make that foot bigger. Top of the guitar, just a little bit more towards us, pointed towards us. I might need a new sheet. So his thigh there is going more towards us. This foot is a little bit further, closer to us. I pushed that down a little ways. There's a big old depth cue in the direction of his hat. There's even a directional cue, like on the end point of his cane there, if you notice. You can see there's kind of like a wrapping effect right here, but let's go back to him real quick. You can see like the forms are kind of wrapping over his torso there. This tuxedo. So you can use a little bit of the forms of the tornado here to kind of help with his torso for sure. I'm gonna really like shrink his arm down here. And then play with really kind of beefing up the arm that's closer to us. So this leg kind of feels like it's going away from us. I'm going to push that a little bit more like that. I'm going to keep his feet kind of small and dainty because I kind of like where that's going, but make this one bigger because it's closer to us. So he's starting to look like a little bit more like an exaggerated character design there. I only got a minute to do this, and there's a lot of complicated stuff happening in it, so I'm just gonna handle it as like a big long tube. So let's get some quick impressions of this guy. Angle of the face. Angle of the shoulders. So I'm imagining there's an imaginary vanishing point that all his limbs are going towards. Which is essentially what the person who did this was doing. So it's kind of spelled out for us where the depth cues are. So this is a drawing, this is not a photo. they had to make design decisions about where stuff is placed and what they emphasize and so on in order to make the depth read. Okay, Google, how much time left on timer?
39 seconds left.
Cool, this will be the last pose of this set. We got 2 more sets after this. So it should be fun. Take a nice 10-minute break, I think. Okay, Google, stop. Let's pause on that guy. And I need to give my hand a little break. So I'm not going to be drawn through this break session here. But we'll take a look at what people are doing. All right. So what do we got? Oh, fun. Yeah, these show off some really good. If you want to like reference some examples of what we're trying to get at with this, like the Dead Cells trailers show off a lot of exactly what we're practicing in when applied to animation and animation posing. You can see like all the depth cues and stuff I'm talking about, like this nitty-gritty gut stuff that looks like really sloppy drawings and stuff. Well, I mean, they are kind of sloppy because I'm coming back rusty, but that's neither here nor there. Like even if you're rusty, like you know what those things are that you struggle with to put together into stuff like this. Like you can take I could take like any of these kind of loosey-goosey drawings, and then I could do another drawing on top of it with the information that's like recorded in this. Like I know what direction that thigh is going. I kind of have a general idea from the gesture and the ground plane and stuff of where everything's pointing and going. So it's like the information is embedded in there for me to use that. That's what you should be going for. These are almost kind of like shorthand notes of the pose, of the essence of the pose, that tell you what the pose is doing and give you enough information to elaborate on. Yeah, maybe I should include this in the handouts, because this kind of shows off a little bit of the playing the lines against each other with confidence that I was talking about. So I'll upload that, I guess. Do you see there's like, even in this like quick sketch right here, there's a this is the cuneiform line of action assignment, basically what I'm doing there. I'm just adding in additional information of like that little ground plane that he's got his palm on, for example. That's really the only depth cue that's in that one, I would say. There's enough there to work with that I can kind of infer depth in there, but that's the only real overt depth cue there, that hand on the ground from what I drew. But the point of me showing this is I want people to contrast with confident angular straights against sharp angular straights against flowy energetic, forceful, or light and fluid waves of curves. Just going through people's. There's some fun stuff here. What I really like is like a when you start doing the tornado, like inherently because of how you're doing the concentric circles and stuff, like sometimes one side of it will tend to look a little darker, which makes for better contrast on the read of it. Like for example, on this left side of this looks a little bit darker, so that, and this side is a little lighter. I think that was intentional here because you're kind of you were using light and heavier and lighter line to kind of infer depth, and that was a good decision because it makes the forms contrast and read easier. So there's some smart decision making going on in here. These are design decisions made to design a form to make the form read. You can see that that kind of thinking goes into stuff like this also. Darker foot back there in shadow, smaller limb, exaggerated hand right there, really severely exaggerated perspective on that spear. This specific pose right here is there's an anime name for this pose that was coined by a particular Japanese animator that likes using this pose a lot, especially for swords. Yeah, here's some severe examples of that sort of thing going on here. Itty bitty tiny foot in fake perspective going back there. It's definitely happening there. Like, it feels like this arm is going away from us because, like, we have the directional cues of the overlap right here on the wristband right there, and how small this hand is. Plus, we're seeing kind of like a little bit of the underside of the palm, of the base of the palm, and we're seeing like the underside of the finger curled down a little bit. And so right here, straight against curve. Although in this case, on this character's curves are more kind of angular, but these are curves. So this is a straight against a curve, basically. Curve, straight. See that confident right angle right there for that elbow right there. This is kind of curvy, but this is a right angle straight joint. Actually, I think this one is a little more straight. That one, the top of the thigh tends to be curvy an awful lot, I've noticed. See if I can find some other examples in these poses. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like, you can see, like, you look at these and you see, like, what we're working towards with why we're doing this, basically. Like, we want to be able to create and animate poses like this. Yeah. I think it might be a good idea to take a longer look at the Dead Cells animated trailers tomorrow. Actually, I'm probably not going to get copyright bonked if I play them now. I'm pretty sure that these are on Sakuga Burrow, though, so I can probably just bring them up. Sakuga. What time is it? It is 7:47. I think what we're going to do is we're going to take a detour on Sakuga Burrow, and then we'll do one more 20-minute set, and that'll be the evening. So let's maybe take like a little feed our head mini break here. So Dead Cells. Oh, come on. Dead Cells. You gotta be kidding me. They don't have Dead Cell stuff on Sakuga Burrow? I thought they did. Damn it. Guess they don't. Oh well. Well, here's some of the animated trailers. There's several of them, actually. For each of the expansions and some other things. I think the Bad Seed is the main one. Oh, here, let's see. Yeah, I mean, if you want to see good examples of like what we're basically trying to, the mechanics of what we're trying to practice in action, this is a fantastic thing to look at for sure. Check out that multiple right there. Multiples multiples are similar to smears in animation, where like there's more than one image, kind of an after image effect of a character or parts of limbs or things like that when it's moving really quickly. You can see that limb right there, and same thing here. There's like two multiples. There's a multiple of this guy's back in a different pose there. And check out why they used it. Okay, so this move right here that they're doing, he's basically just like elbowing him in the gut to knock him to the ground, but he does it so quickly. We see like a before image right here. This is what's actually supposed to be happening at this moment. But we see a before image of where this is heading with what they're doing. So it's like this weird kind of impression of like the whole action all at once, like a really abstract way. See that? And so it reads. We get the read of like just how painful it'd be to get like that sharp, heavy blow from the elbow into your gut. Bounce. Check that out. Look, perspective, wrapping forms over the lines of the body. See that? They're all going in perspective direction. Same with this guy right here. You can read it from the head. Up tilt. You can see the underside of the mouth. This fist is smaller because it's further away from us and down there, and it's correlated, but it's like correlated to this fist up here. Like there's this kind of like a jump rope connecting between the two, an invisible jump rope kind of connecting between the two fists. Right there, you can see where my mouse is going. And there's like you can see the line of action here too of the pose as well. Look at that. Exaggerated side towards the camera, smaller side away from away from us. Although in this case, this guy, he looks like this particular arm is like particularly beefy too. You can see like this leg is very slightly smaller than that one, just very slightly, just like in an angle. Just very small, subtle things. Smaller, larger, closer to the camera. Up tilt, you see like the angle of the shoulders and then like cascading down the body. It's fake perspective kind of. Big little foreshortening there. Stuff's getting smaller as it goes away. Depth cues of these wrapping forms over the body. And sometimes like some parts of a character design will inherently have stuff that makes depth cues read a little easier. In this case, like this character has some very cubic parts to his design, like this weapon on his arm and that little shoulder pad and bits and pieces here are more kind of geometric. So they're an opportunity to kind of make the angle of the form and the direction of the form read a little bit more solidly. That's a really fun smear there. Look at it. There's a lot of smearing going on in this drawing. There's the big old smear there, a little bit of smear there, little smear there, smear blur, big smear. And check this out. This is a good example of like what I'm talking about when I say like you want to think of your poses as a singular unit. Like you could fill in a shape, a single kind of shape that looks kind of like a piece of looks like a flan dessert or something, or like a pudding. little pudding on a plate or something that kind of follows this. You see? That's a cool pose there. Look at that. Busted arm, but like also like kind of jiggly, jiggle bones, toony sort of effect there. You can see all that stuff about perspective applies even to like a really simple character like this too. Like, look at that. It's going away. That thigh is going away from us. Calf's further away from us, so the calf is smaller. So on. Start getting used to playing with these tools and these rules. Like, look at that. Like, perspective line. These are all going towards the vanishing point over here. In this case, this perspective was actually thought out a little bit. You can even see like playing out the perspective grid in the backdrop here. So there's like perspective going up here. So creating this kind of getting smaller towards the top, and larger towards the bottom of this character design. And then you have like angle of perspective going that way, and whoops, an angle of perspective going this way. So like a 3-point perspective. Lovely. Yeah, and this is that's perspective right there. We get cues in the backdrop in this case that help us read the perspective. There's a grid basically with the design of the floor here, so we know what the plane is of the floor that we're looking at. And this is following to that vanishing point right there. 1-point perspective right there. Wow. So you can see like there's perspective on this too, like this huge creature here. This has got volume on it. You can wrap lines over that in a tornado and stuff, and that's traveling upwards along the perspective. Same thing here, you can wrap lines over him. You can see the angle of the vanishing point down over here. See the angle of a vanishing point going down over here for like the side plane of this guy's body. And even like this. And even like back here with the background. You can see there's wrapping forms over this thing here. Concentric wrapping forms that are sort of that are following the same, roughly the same pattern as the protagonist character. You can start reading these things and start using them. Again, exaggeration right here. Small back there. Small foot back there. Small, larger, largest, because it's the closest thing of this creature towards us. Some severe exaggeration going on here with that giant foot. Tiny, 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 giant. Tiny, giant. And it's like this is a distorted, exaggerated perspective, cheated perspective even, but it's still following its own logic. See that? You could put a box around this guy right here, and like a cube around this guy, and it would make sense with the in the context of the angle that we're looking at the scene with right here. Like before you'd even draw, if you had trouble drawing this guy, you'd just draw like a cube following the perspective lines of the scene around him, a 3-point perspective cube. And then you'd have a bounding box to create a gesture inside of, and then start working out his body shapes. So we're going to come back from our break in a little bit, but I wanted to kind of open people's third eye to this sort of stuff and where this stuff is going and why we're doing this. And the Dead Cells trailers are an excellent example of that sort of thing. I'm going to hold on to those to do some studies from tomorrow, in fact, in the Discord. So we're going to have some fun now. I'm going to maybe, you know what? I'm going to put this one on loop. I'm going to put this playback speed to 25. And let's toss this bad boy up over here. Oops. And we'll use that as some inspiration for the rest of the session, for the last set. So, also another thing, if you notice, even the title screen here uses perspective, which kind of sets the tone for the feel of the whole trailer. So let's see here. Did I set it on loop? Yeah. There it is. All right, so it's on loop. I put it on slow-mo, and we'll get started on a 20-minute set. The last thing we do this evening. Okay, Google, set timer for 20 minutes, 30 seconds.
20 minutes and 30 seconds. Starting now.
All right. So let's start playing with it. Like, I hope the way I have things right now on my Twitch stream, I hope you can see enough of the pose here to do some drawings from, while also having like a good view of our inspirational material right there. No, I'm going to leave this one paused. So I'm going to give us more time than usual to really kind of dig through this without racing against the clock. So we have some more time to really think about using these depth cues. So I'll change it once I get like pretty good along with my drawing, but we'll kind of take it at our own pace for these. I got my overall impression of what's going on here. Now that I got that, I'm going to take what I did and play with it some more. And invite you guys to do it too. I think for this last one, we will just take as much time as we want to on this pose to try to make an exaggerated cartoon scene out of it. Try to make it come alive on its own terms. Like, once you kind of have like the general idea of what's happening, just start playing with it. So a little bit of this guy's hand is visible behind her. I'm gonna actually... I could either eliminate the hand or I could like stick it way out over here or something. I think I might do. And I'll shrink it like that. Yeah, I kind of like that we have inspirational material on screen to kind of play off of. I think that might be a trick we might want to use more of. For our sessions here, because it's a good idea to like have some examples of like what we're going to be trying to do with this stuff handy by artists that have pulled it off really well. So it starts all of us pulling like in the right direction. So let's hold on to that idea for future sessions for sure. I've actually done that before, where we had like on-screen inspiration while we do stuff like this. But I think like having it right there after we've actually like looked at it and seen, oh, this is what this stuff is gonna, this is why we're doing this stuff. It kind of gets a sense of playfulness going. And we aren't like stabbing in the dark as much. We can kind of see how like other artists have played with the rhythms that we're trying to play with, or similar rhythms. What website are you? I'm not using any website. These are all I like gathered these from Google image searches and Pinterest and stuff. And I'm using an app called Gesture Drawing 3, which is $15 on QBrush. Of course, I just have the image paused right now, so... So you could just do this with Windows Viewer. So I'm kind of thinking about like how this might look as like an animation spear. So she's like thrusting up her arm right there. So maybe I'd smear on her knuckles or on the back of her arm or something. I like how evidently in pain the guy in the photo is. Of course, this is like an acted staged scene right here, so it's not really, he's not really in pain. It's a stunt. But it's a really nicely staged stunt. It gives us a lot to work with. My best guess, based on the, I think this photo they might have snapped it while they were in motion showing this off, but they might have slowed down at this point. Like they might have been doing the stunt in slow motion, basically, like acting it out slowly, so they could like push his facial expression or something for the photograph. Like I this might be from like a martial arts disarmament training manual or something. Or this might be artist reference of like combat poses. It looks like it's from like a training manual to me. Like a police training manual or something. So it's still kind of a gestural sketch, but so you can see I've been able to kind of pick out more of the shapes in it to kind of make it into a little bit more of a structured drawing. So we might go to another pose. Yeah, we'll do another pose. We'll make another 10-minute pose out of this. So get ready, start making like your last decisions on your pose right now. Because we'll be moving to one more 10-minute pose for the session. Okay, Google, how much time left on timer?
T-minus 9 minutes and 18 seconds.
Cool. Okay, Google, add 1 minute to timer.
Done. 1 minute added to your timer.
Let's pick a pose that would be good to finish on. Actually, let's make it easy on ourselves. I'll do the 10-minute thing. Okay, let's see. What would be a good pose that just reads really nicely? Okay, Google, stop timer.
No problem. It's canceled.
Looking for what would be a good 10-minute pose that would... something that reads really well that we could play with exaggerating. This one, maybe. Yeah, let's do this. Okay, Google, set timer for 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Starting now.
All right, this will be our last pose of the evening. We're going to be playing with all the stuff that we were playing with this evening. But we have a whole 10 minutes to make something fun out of it. So in this case, we can actually see an opportunity to play with the bow and the arrow torso principle. One side is more stretched out and more like a C curve, and the other side is more like a couple of straights. If you're not comfortable with drawing a whole gun, you can just use simple box forms. I actually do want to make drawing props and guns something on the agenda for the future for sure. Like, start figuring out about how you can play the different forms against each other. Remember, you're making an exaggerated, cartoonified version of this pose. You can do whatever you want with it. Mine's pretty close to how it is, so I'm going to reduce opacity on it, create a new layer, and see what I can do with playing with it more. I've got an idea. There we go, starting to get somewhere with this. Feeling pretty fun to me right now. And maybe I could do like this. I don't like the placement of that, but the idea is not necessarily too bad. Like having your other arm do something, kind of holding a knife. And have it be much smaller, like something like that. That gun is definitely doing some vanishing pointy things, for sure. And that's something that I can use to play with further on this if I was going to take this sketch any further, too. Let's see here. It's coming more towards us. Thigh's going down that way. Or the calf. This one doing that. A little bit of the top of the head there. Okay, Google, stop. Cool. So yeah, it'd be cool. It'd be cool to see what people got out of doing that. Like I've wanted to actually maybe do like something like this, where we do like some long poses at the very end, where we really try to work them up into more thought out kind of cartoon poses or something. Like putting the pieces together. So let's take a look what people have done. I actually want to keep working on this a little bit longer, honestly. Refining it and adding to it and breaking down details more. I'm just going to make a few notes of some things that I want to put in here before we check and see what people have done in chat. Not talking right now because I'm a little bit in the zone. I'm enjoying doing this. This is fun. So today started really rough, but I started to kind of feel it towards the end. And now I think I'm like onto something. I think I leapfrogged over where I left off last time because I haven't been making like more kind of finished character sketches like this lately. And I leapfrogged into doing this instead of doing more prep with more rough figure posing things. So this is not unlike what we're going to be doing for the story week. It's going to be happening in a few weeks, where we'll be focusing on making stuff exactly like this. It's very story driven and very character design driven. Yeah, I wanted to play with this to show like how you play with putting the pieces together to make something. I started to feel it after seeing like the Dead Cells trailer stuff. Sometimes that can be all it takes. Like you see something that kind of gets you in the right frame of mind, and then you just want to go for something. So anyway, we're going to leave it at that. Those are two nice little cartoony gestural drawings at the very end there. And I can maybe work on those some more tomorrow. But let's see what people have done for this evening. Let's take a look at what people have done in Discord before we head out. So there will be more studying tomorrow. I'm not taking off tomorrow. If anything changes, I'll try to notify people in the Discord. Pretty sure I'll get a good night's sleep. Oh, that's fun. Yeah. I like how you're playing with this. Your hair's looking a little big, but that's okay. You're still playing and vibing with it. I see you're trying to get into the rhythm of things. This is very, very much like rhythm. Like getting into the swing with drawing like this is like playing a guitar and doing guitar chords and stuff. Like you gotta practice it every day, rehearse every day. Otherwise you lose the rhythm, and like the bits and pieces don't really flow together very well and stuff. But when you start getting into the swing and practicing it, then the stuff starts connecting up better. Like there's a lot of stuff that I'm not really connecting up too well in these, but the overall underlying flow is starting to come through more. And that also means I want to let people feel like they should. I want people to feel that they should be able to take risks and try experimenting with seeing what happens if they do this or that. Like turning these poses into characters and stuff would be a good way to do that for sure. And I'm hoping we might be able to make a more regular thing out of this. Like the last couple poses of a session, we do something like along these lines where we try to turn them into characters. We do longer poses where we try to put the pieces together of what we're studying into making some kind of an exaggerated character pose or drawing. Yeah, those were the earlier poses in the session tonight. Here we go. This one got a little confused, but I can still see the overall thrust of it. I think that there's some strategies you could use for this. For one thing, you could put the head over here and have more of a silhouette of the elbow. That's kind of what I did there a little bit. Let's see here. Yeah, I saw you darken in the leg back there to differentiate other things. It's kind of tricky. This one, I'm not really getting the depth cues in these. That they're it looks very flat, but you want to get like a floor grid down, and you want to like start kind of playing things against each other three-dimensionally, but good attempt. Let's see here. Yeah, this is a little bit more of what I'm talking about, what you want to be playing with right here, like kind of exaggerated depth right there. Keeping things pretty rough and playing it pretty safe on these, I see. But you can make a bolder statement here by really beefing up that foot and planting it or something there, or at least like the front of it down there, beefing up that foot size. One on the right, I would say. Yeah, Sketchy Face is really starting to tap into some rhythms with what we're doing for sure. You're starting to get a sense of like the rhythmic flow of things. Now it's a matter of like marrying that to like shape design and like grounding things in perspective and anchoring things to three-dimensionality. And that just takes practice and observation really, and adjustment. Like that foot right there, I think maybe angling it like this way and making it look like it's more like kind of warped by the perspective or something might help with that. You gotta want to kind of play with this stuff to see what looks a little bit more in the ballpark. These are just sketches, of course, so they're inherently not going to be like the most corrected thing, but you triage what you can when you're doing stuff like this. Yeah, the biggest takeaway I want people to get from this is to start thinking about how to pitch stuff in Z depth, basically. Like, let me do a quick draw over of this to show what I'm talking about, because it's a little bit hard to wrap your head around this if you're pretty new to it. I'll do a quick draw over of this, just as an example. So, you want to establish some depth cues for you to use as measuring tools, basically. They can be stuff like floor grids or angle of the hips or things like that. So some of the things on that, well, some of the things on this to watch for example, the floor grid that the legs would be placed on. And then you want to think of like the top of the shoulders as being like kind of an invisible box, or like a cube. And the hips as being another cube. In the case of the severely foreshortened arm, that's an opportunity to use the tornado to foreshorten it. And we're just going to keep the hand really simple. Right here, simple cartoon hand. Like this. Ball with some wrapping over forms. But notice like the fingers are still going to be wrapping right here. So we're looking at the underside of this gun right here. So let's say the underside of the gun is going to be something like, it's a box. We have to decide where it's tilted in 3D space, though. So maybe like this. Yeah, like this. Of course, even if this is in perspective, it obeys like the rules of gesture and stuff. So line of action still comes into play. It's just the line. It's just your line of action, and your gesture is warped by the is supposed to be warped and influenced by the perspective. So I don't think making an itty-bitty exaggerated perspective arm is necessarily the world's worst idea. I'm going to really shrink it. So just play with it more. See the top of that head. It's like a dish going over Or if you wanted to like really kind of make things easier on yourself, you could do the OKKO thing. Just like her backhand is like just a little ball. Like an OKKO. So her thigh is actually supposed to be coming towards us. Up here. And this thigh is going away from us. That one's coming towards us too. So I got this kind of rough thing in here, so I'm gonna take this, duplicate that. This thing's a very like rough first impression of the image, and that gives me something to play with now. So I'm gonna take that. Maybe flip it. See if that might give me some ideas. Try to think in terms of like really kind of like OKKO kind of simplification. So like if it's a straight against a curve, it's just like a really simple line, really simple shapes. We might keep like kind of a cubic front to the front of her boot there. Just round it a little bit. This magazine is something like that, I'd say. No, stick around. Yeah, I mean, like, there's plenty of other resources you can study from, too. Like, you shouldn't be studying from just me. I can point you in the direction of stuff that I know would be able to help you. I'm doing a draw over to kind of, like, show you how this stuff fits together and how you can, like, play with these tools a little bit. Could potentially like really push that leg too, like really exaggerate, like make it ridiculous. In fact, like let's maybe do that. Let's make this one big, huge as hell too. But this one, particularly exaggerate because it's supposed to be coming closer to us than this one. Anyway, this is not going to be like a complete drawing demo, but I just want to like open your eyes to the possibilities of what you could play with this kind of stuff. Let's do a quick screen grab of this and I'll upload it to chat. Yeah, like using like kind of cubic forms to kind of like measure, like kind of measure and play off of, and correlate things together is what you want to shoot for with that kind of stuff. I think this was a little bit more successful for sure. The only thing I would say on this is like maybe the biggest thing I would say on this is maybe this is not too far off from the mark, honestly. So this is just like adding a ground plane right here. Like this works. I think that you did a good job on this pose. There's little things like the fist right there isn't quite working. Like you need things like hand drawing and overlap of the limbs and other things like that. But overall, the feel of this, the gesture, the idea of this pose works pretty well. Think about that because we're seeing a little bit more of the back of the heel because the foot's turned that way. See the front of that foot. So yeah, that's not too far off the mark, honestly. So let me upload this to chat. So don't beat yourself up. I mean, this stuff takes time. But you are learning more than you realize, even at this early stage in your development. Just by virtue of paying attention to figure poses and trying to play with them. But what might help you with wrapping your head around three-dimensionality, and I'm going to recommend folks here if you're struggling with your draftsmanship on 3 dimensions, the Drawbox website is an essential like early draftsman's tool. Whoop, hang one second. Let me get rid of this. For wrapping your heads around 3D forms. Just copy this. Put that in chat. Oops. There we go. But you can see like how I wrapped the wrist there to like have it like she's wrapping her wrist up over. So I have like the direction of the wrist changing there and so on. But yeah. Anyway, I hope that helps you a little bit. Yeah, like I said, if you're struggling with understanding 3D form, Drawbox site. I recommend this to everyone who's pretty new to this stuff. You want to go through this very, very slowly and carefully. Read the text. Reading this text will actually help you get more value out of the practice and the stuff that I show off to you in my classes. Read the text and read about what it tells you about how to change your mindset, how to hold your drawing pencil and stuff. And the actual lessons involve a lot of like draftsmanship skills and a lot of perspective drills. Drawing like 3D boxes and trying to wrap your head around how these boxes work and so on. And you'll start to develop a freehand sense of 3D form. I actually have wanted for a while to start using this site a lot more. So who knows, we might dip into this stuff a little bit tomorrow as a part of warm-ups or something. But they are a good resource to go. I would say that they are good to go with, even if you're an advanced artist. And I've been wanting to dig more into them more in the future. But they will be an essential help for anyone who's having trouble thinking about things in terms of 3 dimensions. But luckily for all of you, we have today. Tomorrow we're going to be practicing some more. Friday we're going to be doing another live Twitch session like this, where we'll be practicing this stuff some more and developing and building on it more. Saturday I want to kind of complement what we're doing, what we started doing today, but marry it with storyboard focused stuff. Monday I'm hoping, instead of making it a reboot day, I'm hoping we maintain continuity with what we're doing here, because Wednesday we will do the next step of the Alex Wu stuff, and the next step next week is exaggeration, where we will be taking some of the depth cues and stuff that we've already been practicing, and we'll be playing with pushing them even more, like even crazier than the stuff that I've done here for these like quick sketch things. So we'll have plenty of time and plenty of swings of the bat to keep playing with this. And I would say that anyone who's struggling with 3D forms and stuff, start checking out the Draw a Box site. Start working your way through the drills and reading the text in order, if you can. Don't skip around in it. You want to read it in order so you understand why they're telling you do the lessons and stuff. But that'll help you start wrapping your head around this stuff. Remember though that like most of animation and most storyboard art is basically just gesture drawing in 3D space. Gesture drawing influenced by perspective or false perspective. Remember, we saw some examples of that sort of thing on like this, with like these false depth cues and stuff. But this is based in an understanding of how perspective works. You can see those boxes back there. Those are going to a vanishing point. They're kind of irregularly placed, but like everything kind of makes visual sense here for the most part, because this is someone who understands the rules of perspective enough to bend them. Like, and he's got like cues all over the place. Like the clouds are a cue for the clouds are depth cues right here. The clouds are depth cues. The roundedness of this vine that vine or tree root that Crash is going on has depth cues all throughout it. It's basically like a big long version of the tubes that we were drawing today in the tornado. That tree right there has basically that. And you can see the underside of that thing. These without these top pieces right here would lack depth. But because you can kind of see the underside of the leaves here. We know that we're looking up at these from a low angle. You can see like this is an upshot right here on this kind of skull mountain thing, and you can see like the way that this composition works. You can see like there's like these kind of circle perspective ellipses almost coming down from the center of attention right here, where the volcano's erupting, and those are kind of used to sort of play off the rest of the scene and help kind of play with the bendy, kind of slightly fisheye, playful, bendy perspective going on here. I actually like this sketch better than the painted piece in this case, because like her eyes are much sharper, and their eyes and facial features are much sharper. Like I think the shadowing and stuff kind of detracts from how sharp and expressive the face and the amount of attention that is pulled towards the faces in this. Like I would want to see like a toon shaded version of this where the faces are are shaded more simplistically. So I think this actually makes a stronger. I think this but toon shaded would be a stronger, and with like only like if like just their faces were toon shaded, that or a little bit more on the toon shaded end of things versus more rendered, I would say is what I would want to see. But these are, of course, these are just like concept art pieces. Oh, this is for an art book, actually. A few illustrations for the. That's cool. Oh yeah, check this out. These are like some color scripts he did. These are not quite storyboards per se. This is like color scripting. So this is like something that they take a storyboard panel of, and then they did like a color script paint over, basically. So these are essentially like colored up storyboard panels. Neat. Anyway, we're gonna call it a night here. Thank y'all for coming. So you get the congratulations screen, folks. Thank you for sticking around through the whole thing.